Hi, it's me, Sam, and this is By Hook or By Needles. And today we are going to look at increases. I'm going to just show you two today. Well, technically three, but because one of them is done differently, yeah, we'll get to that. The most used and easiest increase that is used is what we call a knit front and back. That is abbreviated in your knitting pattern as KFV. Now, it literally just means you knit front and back of the stitch to double it up, because when you increase, you're turning one stitch into two. So we've got our knit stitch, we go into the front as if to knit, we knit, we pull up our yarn. Now instead of pulling off the stitch, we leave it on, we bring our needle up and around, and we go in through the back loop or the back leg of the same stitch, and we knit again. And you can see we now have two stitches where we had one. Let's do that again. We're going to increase, so we go in through the front leg as though we're knitting, we come out, we don't take the stitch off, we just take our needle around and we go in to the back leg or the back loop, and we knit again. So we're knitting the front and the back of the stitch. So in, we don't take it off, we leave this on, we go around, we're trying to get around to come into the back of the same stitch, and we knit again, and that gives us two stitches instead of one. Just going to purl back. As I say, it's probably the most common increase used. It is probably the easiest increase. Well, actually, I don't know whether it's the easiest increase. It depends, I suppose, on your idea of what is easy. It's definitely the most common one, though, especially in beginner projects, because it is quite a simple one to master. Okay, so you can see, you can just see here, that's the increased stitch. That's the increased stitch, and that's the increased stitch. It's just got a slight bump there. Now, another way to increase, which is a little bit more decorative, I guess you would say, It's used sort of mostly for garments, for doing a raglan sleeve and that sort of thing. And that is what we call make one left and make one right. Make one left and make one right means you get the right slanting, right slanting. So the stitch slants to the right, or left slanting, so the stitch slants to the left, the stitch that you've increased. And that's just to, depends on where you position it as to which one you'll be asked to make. To make one, you can pick up the stitch, and you could just knit it, but then you're going to have a great big hole, so we don't do that. The make one right, I'll do that one first. I always remember how to pick up the stitch between by saying I will be right back. So if we wanted to slant right, we pick up the stitch from the back, but we knit it in the front. Like that. So I'll be right back. We pick up the stitch by coming from the back of the work to the front of the work, and we're going to knit through the front leg. And we've increased by creating a whole new stitch. We're not taking, with the knit front and back, you're taking an existing stitch and you're doubling it. With the make one, you're literally making one. You're creating a whole new stitch by just picking up the loop between two stitches. So we'll do that again. I'll be right back. We come from the back to the front. Then we knit through the front leg. And we've created a stitch. Okay, so what do we do if we want to do some left leaning stitches, increases? Well, it's the opposite. I haven't got a little way to remember that. I just know that I'll be right back. That's the right leaning. You go through the back of the loop, and the left is just the opposite. You go through the front, but you knit through the back loop. Okay, so you pick it up from front to back, and then you knit through the back. And you've increased by one. Front to back. And knit through the back of the stitch. One last one, front to back, and then we knit through the back of the stitch, and that twists it so that you don't get a big hole. See, if I just pick that up and knit it through the front, I'm going to end up with a great big hole. But by doing what we do, by knitting through the back, we're actually twisting the stitch. It's almost like you could almost pick it up and twist it like that. See how it's twisted? And that's what we're doing. We're basically twisting the stitch. Picking it up. And we're knitting through the back. And that twists it. And that stops a great big hole from forming. So that's the make one left and make one right. You may wish to go back and replay those stitches. I'm just going to knit a couple of rows because I want to show you the purl front and back should you ever have to increase on a purl row. So I just put a couple of rows between the last few increases and the next few. There's two ways of doing the purl front and back increase. One is technically not a purl front and back, it's more of a purl front knit back, but it produces a similar, you get the increase at least, and it produces a similar look, but it's more obvious. You know, the increase is more obvious. Okay. So, just going to purl a couple of stitches, so I'm a couple of stitches in. So, to purl front and back, you go in as if to purl, just like you were knitting with the knit front and back. You don't take the stitch off this needle, and you take this needle around. You're coming up and you're picking up that back leg, and then you're going to purl again through the back leg, and that creates two stitches from one. So purl, we need to bring this around through the back leg, and we've got two stitches from one. Alternatively, if you find it a bit tricky to sort of maneuver around and get it all into there and all the rest of it, what you can do is you can purl, bring your yarn around to the back, and you can just knit through the back leg. And you get two stitches from the one again. It will, at the front of your work, you will notice there is a more obvious bump. So it's more obvious than the increase, but you know, if you're not worried about that, then, you know, then that's fine. So we'll just do that one again. We go purl. The yarn has to go around to the back because we're knitting, and we're going to be knitting through the back leg. And you've got to obviously bring your yarn forward again to continue purling the row. But like I say, I prefer the purl front and back. The purl, come around, up, okay. Now those are your most common increases for beginners. Both are going to be, you know, they're not going to produce, you know, oops. You're not going to get sort of big gaps appearing, but you can already see, just looking at that, where the two purl front knit back increases are. Yes, they are slightly easier to make, especially if you have arthritis or just shoulder issues or whatever. They are easier to produce, but you will notice the increases more because you've got those two bumps from the part which is a knit stitch. Whereas the other ones, you can't see. And if you look really closely, you can see them because it's there. I think one's there, but you don't have these big bumps. So that's two types of ink. Well, like I say, with the make one left and make one right, you know, you've got the right slanting or the left slanting. That's one type of increase, but it's done in two different ways to produce two different looks, just to match whatever you're making. But they are the increases I'm going to show you for now, because they are, I think, like I say, the easiest, the most used, and all the rest of it. And yeah, they're more beginner friendly. So that's the increases. The next video will be decreases. There's basically just two decreases I'm going to show. They are similar to the make one left and make one right, in the sense that one is right leaning and one is left leaning. So it just, you know, depends what side of your work or whatever, you know, you're working on. They're good for raglan sleeves and that sort of thing. If you're ever knitting a raglan jumper and you want to get that really nice line of decreases happening on along the shoulder line. But yeah, I'm gonna have to go because my voice is slowly getting worse. But that's the two increases. Practice them, because we will be doing a dishcloth on the bias once we've learnt our decreases. Okay, so take care everybody, and excuse me, bye for now.